A stunning millionaire SRMs at a boy for touching her Ferrari, but what happens next is INCRED. Jordan stepped out of the diner, apron tied around his waist, the smell of grease clinging to him. The sun glinted off the chrome of the stunning red Ferrari parked just outside. His heart raced as he approached the car, fingers itching to trace the sleek curves. It was the kind of car that made dreamers out of ordinary boys, and for a moment, he was lost in a fantasy of engineering marvels, racing through life unburdened by reality. But just as he reached out, a harsh voice sliced through the air. "What do you think you're doing?" Jordan's stomach dropped. Emma, the owner of the car, a millionaire entrepreneur, stood there glaring, her posture rigid and unyielding like a dam against a flood. Her eyes burned with disdain, piercing through his humble exterior and revealing the truth of their world's divide. Shame surged in him as bystanders turned, their faces a mix of curiosity and judgment. They were watching him, the son of a mechanic, reduced to an embarrassment in front of a woman who had everything he aspired to. "Who do you think you are?" Her voice quaked with indignation, echoing in Jordan's mind, drowning out the supportive voices of his parents. This was more than just a verbal assault. It was a condemnation of everything he had worked for. All the late nights spent poring over automotive books, every penny saved for materials to construct models that had never been seen by anyone but himself. Were they worthless in the eyes of people like her? He hesitated, the weight of economic disparity crashing down on him. He was supposed to be the honor student, the hardworking kid with dreams, yet here he felt only small and unworthy. Jordan's hands trembled as he pulled them away from the car, a mix of anger and frustration bubbling up inside him. Exposed to the crowd's scrutiny, his resolve began to crack, and he questioned his very path. Had he wasted his time dreaming? What if he never made it as an automotive engineer, forever linked to this moment of humiliation? He wanted to scream back, to show her the intricate details of his models, to make her realize he wasn't just a kid, he was a determined future engineer. Yet the words were lodged in his throat, an icy lump that paralyzed him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emma's frustration simmered, not just with him, but with the gaze of the crowd, a swirl of sympathy for him and disdain for her. She was a woman carved out of necessity, with the drive to prove her worth in a world that seldom acknowledged it. Her judgments were her armor, but at this moment, it only shielded her from seeing Jordan's potential. Within him, the conflict festered. How could she know the years he detoiled? Every graphite line a promise to himself. As he stepped back, the faces around him reflected a truth he struggled to confront. They saw a boy in a diner uniform, not the future he envisioned. Anxiety bubbled up within him, a chilling fear that the world would never see the worth buried beneath his unpolished surface. As the moment lingered, the tension palpable in the air, Jordan could feel the community's pulse, a synchronization of discomfort and anticipation. He stood at a precipice, his dreams heavier than ever. Could he rise despite this humiliation? Would Emma ever move beyond her preconceptions and truly see him? In the thrumming quiet of the crowd, Jordan hovered between despair and determination, realizing that the next step might alter the trajectory of his story forever. Jordan's back pressed against the rough brick wall of the diner as he blinked away the heat of humiliation. The crowd dissipated, their whispers fading into the clamor of the diner's kitchen. But the sting of Emma's gaze lingered like smoke in a small room. He took a deep breath, palms still clammy. It wasn't just the encounter. It was the revelation that echoed louder than her reprimand. How easily others could see him as small, inconsequential, his dreams laughed at by those who hadn't lived through the same struggles. Determined to push against the weight of her judgment, Jordan turned and walked towards the back alley behind the diner, the shadows wrapping around him like a protective shroud. A flicker of anger ignited within him a new energy that he didn't want to stifle. He had spent too long hidden beneath expectations, content to play the role of the underdog. It was time to confront that label head-on and challenge the notion that he didn't belong in the world of engineering. As he crossed the peeling white paint of the alley's walls, Jordan's mind began to reel through the possibilities. He'd always envisioned showcasing his designs, attended competitions, and networking with people who could help him if only they could see his potential. But how was he supposed to fit into a reality where he was measured by someone else's standards? That night, as he sat at his cluttered desk, he felt the surge of resolve deepen. He wasn't just a diner boy. He was a creator, an artist, a dreamer. Scanning the stacks of paper filled with his designs and sketches, the rough lines that shaped his automotive visions, he felt the tug of inspiration. Each design, messy and tentative, contained a piece of his soul that screamed to be acknowledged. What if he could host his own showcase? A gathering of like-minded individuals who understood passion and drive, not wealth or status. He grabbed a sketchbook and a pencil, hardly aware of the hours slipping by until a sense of purpose snapped him back. Jordan began outlining a plan for the showcase, a small, local exhibition that could mingle with the community, featuring promising engineers and their blueprints. It would be a chance for him and others to shine away from conventional measure of success. Instead of competition against the elite, it would be a celebration of raw talent, ingenuity, and aspiration. Memories of Emma's critical gaze transformed into fuel for his ambition. He recorded details for the event, venue options, promotions, possible speakers. As the clock hands crept toward midnight, Jordan realized he wasn't merely shaping a plan. He was building a bridge to his future. The ideas flowed forth, exhilarating him with each line drawn in graphite against the crisp, white pages. But as he lay in bed that night, anticipation shifted into doubt. Was he overstepping? Would anyone even come? The internal dialogue sparked an unease akin to the earlier humiliation. They might not care about some kid's dream. Perhaps Emma's words epitomized an unchangeable truth, the divide between those with means and those without. He resolved against the creeping fear. Doubt could be a catalyst or a wrecking ball. It was up to him to choose. As he formulated the next steps, he knew this showcase wasn't just an idea, it was a declaration of his worth, a way to confront Emma's world with his own ardent spirit. The time had come to redefine his narrative and face challenges head-on. Now, as Jordan walked through the sunlit streets the next day, a palpable sense of purpose hung in the air. He was ready to take the next step in moving from the shadows and doubt into the light of opportunity. All he needed was a little courage and a chance encounter, perhaps even with Emma herself. Little did he know, she would not be so easy to forget. As the sun rose higher, its rays piercing through the haze of anxiety that had blanketed Jordan's mind, he felt an electrifying sense of urgency. Today was not just another day. It marked the beginning of his transformation. He had spent years on the periphery of his dreams, and now he was ready to step into the light. Armed with a pocket full of ideas and a heart beating wildly with fervor, he was determined to navigate the path laid before him. He wandered into the local engineering school, a place buzzing with creativity and innovation. The students carried their blueprints like trophies, and the air smelled of fresh ideas still waiting to take flight. Jordan's pulse quickened. He saw a world where his ambitions could thrive. As he entered the studio, he felt acutely aware of the stares, the inquisitive looks of those who never knew the struggles he faced, eyes that perhaps questioned whether he belonged there. The walls echoed with chatter about projects and collaborations, and for a moment, he felt dwarfed by the weight of expectation. But as he adjusted his own worn backpack filled with sketches, a fire ignited within him. This was his battleground. Drawing a deep breath, he approached a cluster of students gathered around a table strewn with component designs. "Hey, I'm Jordan. I'm looking to put together a showcase for upcoming engineers. I want to create a space where creativity can flourish, free from judgment." The four students exchanged glances, some amused, some puzzled. One of them, a tall girl with vibrant purple hair, laughed lightly. "A showcase? Really? In this town? Good luck finding a venue big enough for that. Jordan felt a flicker of doubt but clamped down on it fiercely. It won't just be about the venue. It's about bringing our ideas to life and showing what we can do no matter where we come from. Their expressions shifted from skepticism to curiosity, and in that moment, Jordan opened up, sharing his vision with impassioned clarity. He spoke of the community he aspired to build, of the engineers who felt unseen, and of the recognition for raw talent rather than pedigree. The words flowed from him like music, and he could see the shift in their demeanor, the way they leaned in closer. Their intrigue peaked. "Okay," the tall girl said, her smile widening. "I'm in. But we'll need a plan. You can't just wing it." Jordan felt a surge of relief mixed with disbelief. "Really? You'd want to help? Why not? Everyone deserves a chance to shine," she replied, and the others nodded in agreement. They exchanged contact information and began brainstorming ideas, trading notes on potential speakers and venues. That evening, as Jordan sat at his desk, his heart swelled with a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in ages. This wasn't just a showcase. It was becoming a manifestation of his identity, a collective yearning for recognition. His sketches, once solitary expressions of individuality, now took shape as pieces of a larger, collaborative mosaic. But beneath the surface of excitement lingered a haunting reminder of Emma's dismissive gaze. Would she recognize this newly forged ambition? Would she see beyond the boundaries she had constructed around him? The questions twisted in his mind, mingling with the anticipation of potential. The next day, fueled by resolve, Jordan set out to make his vision concrete. He started reaching out to local businesses, hoping to find sponsorship, and he scoured the network, an online platform for engineers, seeking collaborators. Each encounter, each conversation unfolded like a page in a book. He was desperately writing a narrative of his own making. As the days morphed into a blur of activity and newfound confidence, Jordan was blindsided by the realization of what he could lose in pursuit of his vision. The potential for success was matched only by the risk of failure. The stakes felt higher than ever as he prepared for a meeting with a prominent local engineer known for his unforgiving critiques. And as he stood before the mirror, adjusting the collar of his shirt, he knew that this would be his moment, a crucial test of not only his project but also of his character. As he stepped out, a gust of wind caught his hair, and with it came an overwhelming wave of doubt. Would he be able to defend his dreams against the voice of skepticism? Against the backdrop of uncertainty, he whispered to himself that he was ready to face whatever awaited him. The time had come to confront the challenges before him, but an unexpected text on his phone sent a jolt through him, a message from Emma, asking to meet. He didn't know what to expect, but he felt his heart race in both anticipation and dread. She would have a lot to say, and suddenly, everything felt as if it were coming to a head. Would she tear down the bridge he had started to build or offer support? And just like that, Jordan realized that this was only the beginning of his reckoning. Jordan's heart thudded in his chest as he approached the cafe where he agreed to meet Emma. Each step felt like traversing a tightrope, balancing his burgeoning confidence against the weight of self-doubt. He recalled her sharp criticism, the way she had once dismissed his aspirations as mere fantasies. Would she share that disdain now or witness the evolution he had fought for? The cafe buzzed with lively chatter, but Jordan felt detached from it all, as if he were watching from behind a glass wall. He spotted her there, framed by the afternoon sun, a voice from his past that he was now ready to confront. Her posture seemed relaxed, a stark contrast to the tension coiling in his stomach. He took a breath and walked over. "Emma," he greeted, forcing the words through a throat tight with anticipation. "Jordan," she replied coolly, her eyes scanning him as if assessing the man before her. "You look different." He could sense both curiosity and guardedness in her tone. "I've been working on a project, a showcase for engineers in the community." Emma raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on her lips. "And you think that will actually lead somewhere? I mean, what do you really know about organizing something like that?" The familiar sting of her skepticism shot through him. He fought the urge to shrink back. "I've been learning, talking to people, reaching out for support." It's not just about me anymore. It's about bringing others along. Her gaze shifted slightly, perhaps intrigued by his determination. Others? You mean the same people who laughed at your ideas before? Jordan shook his head, a flash of anger igniting within him. No, those who felt dismissed and unheard. It's time for us to be seen. I want to create something that can change how we're perceived. Are you sure you're not just setting yourself up for disappointment? She pressed further, her sharp words piercing through his resolve. You know how this town operates. Connections matter. He hesitated. Maybe, but I'm trying to build those connections now. I'm not afraid to fail. A prolonged silence enveloped them, and in that moment, he saw a flicker of something in her eyes, perhaps regret or recognition. Jordan pressed on, his voice steady. I need this, Emma. I need to prove to myself that I can do it, and that I'm more than what people like you think. Her expression shifted, the initial coldness giving way to something subtly warm. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll learn, he replied fiercely. But I won't let fear dictate my actions anymore. Emma leaned back, an inscrutable expression clouding her features. That's brave or foolish? I guess only time will tell. A part of him was elated that she was engaging. But the other part hesitated. Was this her way of subtly belittling him further? He couldn't afford to lose hope or conviction now. He carved a thin smile, no longer seeking her approval, but rather cherishing his newfound resolve. Then maybe you should come to the showcase when it happens. See for yourself. I'll think about it. You don't need my approval to succeed, Jordan. Maybe not, he countered, but it would mean something to have you there. With that, Jordan stood up, feeling a rush of reclaiming power over his narrative. The discussion had shifted something within him. No matter how Emma viewed him, he was more than her preconceived notions. As he stepped out of the cafe, the weight felt lighter. He was redefined not just through her perspective but through his unyielding commitment to progress. Just as he was about to head home, a thought struck him, a chilling realization. What would happen if the local engineer's critique proved more scathing than Emma's had been? The meeting loomed closer, and unease curled around him like a vine. In contrast to his demeanor towards Emma, would he be able to handle the brutal truth of an unforgiving critic? He turned on his phone to check the time, the last text from Emma still echoing in his mind. Facing her had opened a door, but what awaited him next was uncharted territory, a direct confrontation with the very possibility of failure he feared yet craved to conquer. As he stepped into his home, determination roiling within, he couldn't shake the anticipation of that upcoming meeting. Would he sink or swim? This time, the stakes felt infinitely higher. Jordan awoke the next morning with a knot of anxiety twisting in his gut. The showcase meeting loomed ahead, a looming specter on the horizon. He flipped over his notes, mentally rehearsing every point he planned to make. Still, doubt infiltrated his thoughts like a thief in the night, the familiar shadows whispering that his ideas were just as impractical as they had once seemed. He took a deep breath, trying to strip away the layers of apprehension. The stakes had never felt higher. Would the local engineers, seasoned veterans in their field, see value in what he envisioned? Or would they dismiss him as he had been in the past? He spent the morning pacing his small living room, envisioning the venue, the layout, and the attendees. Each time he pictured the faces in the crowd, he had to remind himself that they were not there to judge but to connect. Every step felt educated and intentional, yet a part of him questioned if that was merely a facade. As he prepared, he refocused on his purpose. This was about more than just him. It was about voicing the frustrations he had bottled up for so long. It was about giving others who had been ignored a chance to speak. If he could communicate that to the other engineers, perhaps it would resonate more than he imagined. Jordan dressed carefully, opting for a smart blazer juxtaposed with a casual shirt to blend professionalism with approachability. He looked in the mirror, searching for the courage in his reflection. "You can do this," he said, though the affirmation was more challenge than comfort. Finally, it was time to leave. As he stepped into the sunlight, a burst of reassurance filled him. This moment could either define him or merely inform the next stage of his journey. He walked down the familiar streets of his neighborhood, each step laden with the weight of possibility. At the venue, vibrant conversations swirled around him as engineers from various backgrounds gathered. This was uncharted territory buzzing with energy. He smiled at faces he recognized, but the nervousness coiled tighter in his stomach. As he approached the front where he would present, he spotted several figures exchanging business cards and discussing projects. He took a breath, reminding himself of the depth of his preparation. He was no longer alone. This network of minds was here to share, to inspire, and perhaps even to learn. "Jordan, are you ready?" Emily, a colleague, asked as she joined him. He forced a smile, though he could feel the tension within him. "As ready as I'll ever be." The murmurs of the audience faded as the organizer signaled for attention, and he found himself standing amid attentive eyes, curious and expectant. Just as he began, a wave of doubt crashed over him. What if his content failed to spark interest? What if he stumbled mid-sentence? He pushed those thoughts down and began to speak, detailing the project's purpose and the potential it held. He focused on the feeling of empowerment, his words growing fervent as he articulated his vision. By the time he reached the end, he felt liberated. He had poured everything into that presentation, weaving his emotions and intentions into a cohesive narrative. The spontaneous applause from the audience took him by surprise, but what followed next stole his breath. One of the leading engineers approached him, a look of contemplation shadowing his features. "Impressive concept, Jordan. I see real value in what you're proposing." His heart raced. It was a validation he had not anticipated. However, as the conversation unfolded, the man began to pose questions, hard, pointed questions that pressed directly at the core of Jordan's initiative. They were not laced with malice but inquiry, a challenge probing the foundation of his ideas. Jordan felt unease sinking in. Would this be another dismantling of his vision, or could he rise to meet the challenge? Just then, another voice interjected, one of the women from the audience offering a conflicting viewpoint that echoed his inner insecurities. "But without tangible results, how can we trust this will hold?" The intensity in her eyes mirrored his own self-doubt, and he felt the air thicken with the challenge of their scrutiny. And just like that, Jordan knew he was not only fighting for the acceptance of his ideas but against the hidden vulnerabilities he had spent so long trying to hide from. Would he weather the storm or falter under pressure, once again falling prey to the fears that had held him captive? The stakes for Jordan had just escalated, the moment charged with potential affirmation or devastating critique. He took a breath, preparing to confront not only their questions, but the ones he had buried in the depths of his psyche. Neither failure nor success awaited him. All that loomed ahead was the irrevocable bearing of his spirit, testing the strength of his resolve and perhaps, just perhaps, granting him the clarity he sought. Jordan squared his shoulders, his heart pounding with a mixture of trepidation and determination. The questions emerging from the audience had cut deeper than he had anticipated, dredging up insecurities that lay dormant like old scars. He could see the eyes of his peers locked on him, waiting for a response, expecting him to deliver something substantial that could turn their scrutiny into acceptance. "Great question," he began, surprised at the steadiness of his own voice. "I fully understand the concern about tangible results." He took a moment, pacing the small space afforded to him, allowing the weight of the inquiry to settle in. "In the past, I was also caught in the cycle of waiting for validation without action. But this approach, it's about laying the groundwork for innovation." He glanced at the faces, gauging their reactions, interest mingled with skepticism. Just as he began tracing the outline of his argument, a few heads nodded, as if he were striking a chord. But he couldn't dwell on positive signs for too long. The challenge was to sustain their engagement while navigating the vulnerability of his response. He recounted examples of similar projects that had created foundations for future success, from humble beginnings to ultimate scalability. Each anecdote became a stepping stone, elevating his voice above the swell of uncertainty. Rather than just proving results first, we're creating opportunities for collaboration, for shared learning, he emphasized, feeling the energy in the room shift slightly, more toward contemplation and less toward critique. Still, Sharp retorts lingered in the air. The woman's challenging eyes bore down on him, and a small part of him felt the urge to retreat. How many moments had he surrendered to the impulse to shield himself from confrontation? But he was no longer that man, drowning in self-doubt and fear of failure. He could fight for his ideas, articulate his vision despite the relentless shadows of his past. Every established process must start somewhere, and we cannot let the fear of not succeeding paralyze us from trying. He continued, his heart racing with newfound vigor. The worthiness of an endeavor is often not only in its outcome but also in its intent to spark change. I believe this project can lead to something meaningful if we invest ourselves. Some murmurs of agreement swept through the crowd, but the original critic persisted, leaning forward with arms crossed, expression skeptical. Yet, what's to prevent us from repeating the past mistakes? How do you ensure this time is different? Jordan's mind raced for a response, his pulse quickening. This wasn't merely an academic exercise. It was the reiteration of his struggle to redefine his narrative. He leaned into the discomfort, forcing it to reshape his thoughts rather than overwhelm him. I think that the past is essential for guidance, not for restriction. We learn, we adapt, and we evolve. This initiative is not about old frameworks but about revolutionizing the dialogue we have within our practice. The silence that followed felt heavier, marking a pivotal moment, a fragile bridge built between his vulnerability and their scrutiny. Every fiber of his being screamed to retreat, yet he clung onto the feeling of being anchored in his newfound conviction. As the challenging woman opened her mouth again, hesitation clouding her expression, a rush of adrenaline pulsed through him. Would she take the opportunity to analyze him further or unveil a new perspective? He took a breath, preparing himself. Let us talk about our fears openly. What are the doubts swirling around this endeavor? If we can address them head-on, we may cultivate a more productive environment. The invitation hung between them, a daring leap into the unknown. What would they reveal? Would they embrace this challenge collectively or fall back into contentious silence that could dismantle his hard-won momentum? It was like standing on the precipice of discovery. As he awaited their responses, the stakes escalated even further. Was he ready to plunge into the depths of their collective skepticism and carve his space in that landscape, or would he find himself once again on shaky ground? The culmination of their reactions loomed uncertainly on the horizon. Would this encounter mark a critical turning point for Jordan, or would he unravel under the weight of their questions? The unresolved tension drew tight, compelling him to confront a myriad of possibilities ahead. His next move could unlock not just their acceptance, but a deeper understanding of himself and the path he truly wished to forge. The air thickened as silence enveloped the room, weighted by the collective uncertainty that had settled. Jordan's pulse echoed in his ears, each second stretching as he scanned the faces in front of him. No one seemed ready to break the stillness, but he sensed a flicker of frustration beneath the surface. This was far more than a debate. It was a battleground for his own sense of belonging and competence. He leaned in slightly, giving the hesitant critics time to process the challenge he'd just issued. A part of him yearned for their validation while another, deeper part, understood that this moment required him to be unwavering not simply in his answers but in his presence. Too often, he had allowed others' opinions to wield the power to define him, and he recognized now that to claim his authority, he needed to project an unshakable confidence. Finally, a voice broke the tension. You talk of change and growth, but how do we transition from theory to practice without a clear roadmap? It was the original critic, her tone still laced with skepticism but tinged now with genuine curiosity. Jordan had anticipated this. The challenge lay in offering her reassurance without diluting the essence of his vision. Great point, he responded, feeling a swell of determination. We don't have to have all the answers today, but the key is to create iterative plans. We need to set small, achievable goals that can lead us to broader outcomes. Every step will serve to fine-tune our approach as we learn along the way. He paced again, channeling nervous energy into a rhythmic movement, his thoughts syncing with each measured stride. The steps weren't just physical. They symbolized his evolution from hesitant speaker to assertive leader. Before, he would have become flustered by the woman's challenging demeanor. Now, he recognized it as an opportunity, a chance to illuminate the way forward. Our past informs our future strategies, he continued, holding her gaze. Rather than being shackled by previous mistakes, let us document our learnings and adjust our methods. We can apply safeguards to ensure we don't repeat errors. It's a process of continuous improvement. The nodding heads began to multiply slowly, but surely. A palpable shift in energy coursed through the room. It felt as if the floodgates of skepticism were cracking open. But as if answering a silent challenge, another voice chimed in. You haven't addressed how we safeguard our resources. What if this commitment fails again? Jordan exhaled slowly, heart racing. This was a critical junction. He knew the risks of failure well. They haunted him. The memory of prior missteps loomed large, examples he would rather forget but could not escape. Yet now it felt imperative to share this truth with his audience. I can absolutely understand the concern. In my past roles, I didn't always advocate fiercely for sufficient risk assessments or create transparent discussions about failures. We must work collaboratively to create a framework that values engagement over perfection. Each word carried weight, woven tightly with vulnerability and strength. Exposing his own misjudgments became a strategic move, transforming potential liabilities into points of connection. In seeking authenticity, he became relatable. You see, we aren't merely combating challenges. We're expediting our development, he finished with renewed vigor. The woman who challenged him softened, subtly uncrossing her arms. Jordan could almost feel the tension unwind, not just within her but around the entire assembly. He was beginning to dismantle the walls built by skepticism with the tools of honesty and strategy. As the conversation gathered momentum, Jordan sensed a shift towards a constructive dialogue. Ideas flowed, reshaping not only their plans but also transforming his self-perception. Each positive exchange fortified his belief. Not only could he lead, but he was also worthy of being heard. Suddenly, the clock chimed, breaking the spell and prompting a reluctant awareness of the time. Their allotted discussion was slipping away. Before we conclude, let us outline our next steps, he urged, desperate to cement the newfound momentum. But before anyone could respond, a hand shot up, a familiar face, eyes now piercing with intensity. Jordan, if the foundation is weak, how do you plan to ensure us that we are heading in the right direction? A singular thought pierced through the camaraderie. Had he truly addressed the heart of their concerns? Had he unknowingly opened a Pandora's box? His breath caught just as doubt began to creep in again. What lay beneath that question? Was it time to embrace not only the fear of the audience but of his own creeping unease? The uncharted territory loomed ahead. What awaited him on this path? And could he navigate without losing the ground he had just gained? Jordan's stomach twisted as he registered the weight of the familiar face in the crowd, the piercing gaze demanding not just an answer, but reassurance, solid ground amidst shifting shadows. The room had quieted down, yet the tension hadn't dissipated. It filled the air like thick fog, clinging to his thoughts. He had to respond not just to that single inquiry, but to everything it represented, their concerns and, more importantly, his own fragile confidence. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, feeling the pressure of their expectations. Would his passionate appeal enough to cement trust? Establishing a solid foundation is not a one-time achievement, but a continuous process. He began, voice steady yet infused with sincerity. We must engage in regular reviews, not only for our strategies but for the very principles that guide us. Together we'll recalibrate when necessary. Challenges will come, but it's how we adapt that will measure our success. His heart raced with the unexpected momentum of his own words. He was no longer reciting a script but sharing a philosophical approach that resonated deeply within him. The naysayer's expression softened further. Some of the attendees exchanged glances laced with intrigue. Jordan seized the moment. Think of it this way. Every setback is merely a stepping stone to deeper understanding. We must commemorate our failures just as much as our triumphs, acknowledging that growth is often cloaked in discomfort. Their initial skepticism might have waned, but he sensed a new wave of doubt surging. Were they truly ready for the responsibility of honest self-assessment? Did they possess the courage to embrace failure as a necessary part of success? He took a deep breath, employing the method of grounding himself he had learned in mindfulness sessions. As the air circled around him, he remained anchored in this newfound assertiveness. I'll be instructional, yes, but I will also be vulnerable. A leader without vulnerability lacks genuine connection. We're partners on this journey, and collaboration is where strength grows. Jordan's voice resonated, fueled by a burgeoning confidence that surprised even him. If vulnerability could shift this dialogue, why not embrace it fully? His readiness to confront uncertainties and discuss them candidly would mark a departure not just for himself, but potentially for everyone in the room. He caught sight of nodding heads and brightening expressions as realization dawned within the group. Something significant was blooming, and he could feel the initial seeds of interdependence taking root. Could it be that the pathway to their success lay not in soul-crushing perfection but in accepting the imperfection of their progress? He proposed a transitional exercise. Let us brainstorm potential pitfalls together. By recognizing weaknesses, we can begin drafting targeted action plans. This will ensure a dynamic strategy that is flexible enough to adapt as we learn. The atmosphere shifted palpably, a collective willingness emerged, an acknowledgement that they were all navigating the same uncertainty. His chest swelled with a sense of belonging that had been elusive up to this point. Was he finally stepping into that role he had been so doubtful about? As ideas began swirling in the air around him, the mood lightened. Each member contributed, sharing fears that once kept them isolated within their thoughts. It was liberating, transforming the space from a battlefield of scrutiny to a workshop of innovation. Still, the specter of self-doubt lingered in Jordan's mind. He was aware that this was merely the first round of many challenges that lay ahead. Would they be fortified by this openness, or would cracks begin to show as they elected to face deeper issues? His heartbeat thundered, filled with the resonance of potential forged in both vulnerability and shared strength. Just as he considered the next steps, a comment from a previously silent member startled him. But Jordan, can you really commit to being this transparent even in the face of resistance? The question struck deep, echoing more than professional uncertainty. It reached the core of his self-worth. Could he handle the weight of transparent leadership even in moments of crisis? Jordan's resolve tightened. The answer was out there, waiting for him to seize it. The question hung in the air like an uninvited ghost. Doubts clawed at Jordan's consciousness, and he felt the weight of expectation pressing down upon him more than ever before. The room was no longer just a gathering of colleagues. It had transformed into an arena where his vulnerabilities and aspirations were on trial. The challenge was more than theoretical. It was personal. He took a moment, allowing the stillness to settle before responding. That's a valid concern, he admitted, his voice slipping into a more introspective tone. Leading transparently does invite scrutiny. But if we hide our struggles, how can we expect to learn and grow? Jordan was surprised by the clarity of his own awareness. This wasn't just about the team, it was about his own journey. The truth of vulnerability shifted into focus, allowing others to witness his imperfections might also mean he could learn from theirs. In the past, he had been paralyzed by perfectionism, afraid to show any sign of weakness. But in that moment, he caught a glimpse of a different possibility, a chance to lead through authenticity rather than the brittle facade he had previously upheld. Let us not avoid discomfort, he declared, finding strength in his resolve. Let us invite it in and examine it together. If we're willing to share our weaknesses, we'll also uncover our greatest strengths. The members of the team shifted, visibly absorbing his words. He could see the skepticism softening into contemplation. Yet behind that lingering doubt in his own heart loomed the question. Would they trust him enough to go down this path? As he spent more time contemplating his own expression of leadership, Jordan realized that he had relied heavily on the expectations of others rather than the strength of his convictions. The realization struck him as an epiphany. He was not just building a professional relationship based on transactional interactions. He was forging a community bound by shared vulnerability. With each word, he was redefining his role, drawing a line between the leader they needed and the leader he thought he should be. Let us take a moment, he proposed, to reflect silently on our fears and how those fears may have led us to withhold our true potential from one another. Jordan sank into deep thought, and as the group fell silent, he became acutely aware of the unsettling truth. He had been afraid of the very same openness he now sought to cultivate in others. What if transparency led to backlash? What if his flaws were magnified instead of embraced? Yet amidst the anxiety, another realization emerged. If embracing vulnerability had brought forth collaboration, what might happen next if he fully committed to this new path? As he glanced around the room, he caught sight of Matthew, a senior member who had always exuded confidence. A flicker of recognition crossed Matthew's face, as if he were confronting his own fears in tandem with Jordan. This moment of harmony ignited a spark of possibility. Just as Jordan began to feel the energy shift towards something transformative, the room door swung open unexpectedly. A sharply dressed woman strode in confidently, her presence demanding attention. The murmurs quieted as she surveyed the room, her gaze finally landing on Jordan. Is this where the real leaders are? She teased with a slight smirk, but her eyes were sharp, sizing him up. Jordan felt a jolt of apprehension mixed with intrigue. Who was this unannounced visitor, and what did she want? His heart raced, a new wave of unease washing over him. It seemed he would have to confront not just his internal conflicts, but now this unexpected challenge as well. Could he maintain this newfound commitment to vulnerability in the face of such a strong presence? Would he be able to uphold the foundations he'd just begun to lay? Jordan took a deep breath, ready to engage whatever this new development demanded of him. The moment of truth was approaching, and he needed to decide. Would he remain anchored in his vision of transparency, or would he allow this disturbance to unravel his progress? Jordan stood at the crossroads of transformation, feeling the weight of the unexpected visitor's presence resonate through the room. This woman, the ominous newcomer, was not just any outsider. She was a well-recognized expert in engineering, known for her cutthroat critiques and brilliance in the field. Yet, in that moment, he felt something that surged above anxiety defiance. The recognition of his growth ignited a fire within him. "Can I help you?" Jordan projected, his tone steady yet friendly, each word emphatically defining his newfound confidence. The room was thick with anticipation, the shift in energy palpable as all eyes turned between him and this formidable woman. "I was just passing through and couldn't help but notice the eclectic gathering you've got here," she replied, her smile a calculated mix of intrigue and skepticism. "You're all quite serious. So what have you got to share?" Jordan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the group behind him and their expectations, but more importantly, the weight of his commitment to vulnerability. "We're working on a community showcase for engineers, an opportunity to step beyond traditional barriers and highlight innovation through collaboration. Each one of us carries potential that's waiting to be recognized." There was a moment of silence as the crowd absorbed his words again. The woman raised an eyebrow, a flicker of interest dancing in her expression. Yet she responded with a trace of challenge. "Sounds idealistic. What makes you think this approach will resonate here? The engineering world is not known for its warmth, you know. Can you ensure this won't be yet another missed opportunity?" Her critique cut through the room sharper than a knife, and for a moment, he felt it, the gnawing doubt, that familiar shadow creeping back. Had he miscalculated? Would his determination crumble in the face of such reality? But then, he remembered the internal promises he had made to himself, the very commitments to authenticity that had transformed his trajectory. "There is uncertainty," he admitted, strength intertwined with openness in his voice. "But embracing vulnerability can forge connections more profound than mere technical achievements. My vision relies on exploring that aspect, to create a nurturing space for raw talent, free from the cruelties of elitism." The audience shifted again, murmurs of agreement flowing through, reinforced by the honesty he expressed. Encouraged, he pressed on. "If we can allow each individual the chance to express their designs, without the stigma of their backgrounds overshadowing them, we might unearth astonishing innovations." We'll learn from collective mistakes, ensure that every voice is amplified, and celebrate success in any form it takes. The woman's gaze held steady, now weighing his words. You're passionate. But passion without a plan is a recipe for disappointment. What's your true action plan beyond just hope? This pivotal moment crystallized for Jordan a moment where he could reveal the depth of his preparation rather than retreat into fear. The plan includes iterative evaluations, collaborative mentorship, and real-time feedback cycles. We will harness each step for improvement, keeping our efforts rooted in genuine community engagement. He could see the hesitation begin to thaw from the audience, their skepticism challenged by conviction. The woman nodded slowly, her expression shifting toward curiosity. And how do you propose to tackle this if faced with failure? What if it all crumbles? Jordan met her gaze, heart pounding. Yet he felt solid ground beneath him, fortified by clarity and purpose. Failure is a part of any journey. It binds us together as humans seeking growth. The real measure of success lies not in avoiding failure, but in harnessing it. By sharing our setbacks and lessons, we'll endure as a community striving toward effectiveness. The collective energy in the room flickered and sparked, an acknowledgement of the authentic connection he was forging. For the first time, the veil of speculation seemed to lift, and the attendees now leaned in, engaging not just with him but with one another. He had disarmed their skepticism, melding fear with possibility. The woman finally broke into a smile that felt genuine. All right, Jordan, you have my attention, but remember this will require unwavering commitment and accountability. If you falter, we'll be watching. I wouldn't have it any other way, he affirmed, newfound confidence pouring from him like warm sunlight breaking through a dense fog. As the dynamics of the meeting shifted from inquiry to collaborative discussion, Jordan felt a wave of liberation wash over him. This was no longer just about him overcoming doubts. It was about creating a ripple effect of transformation that began with him but was shared by all. In the final moments of the meeting, conversations transitioned from critiquing his vision to cultivating a shared culture of innovation. Ideas blossomed into plans, and an unmistakable excitement surged through the room. His heart soared, and lingering apprehensions became stepping stones for progress. Jordan realized then that he wasn't just building a showcase. He was championing a movement towards accountability, empowerment, and connection that the very act of courage to be vulnerable had unleashed uncharted potential. When he finally left the venue, he stepped out into the fresh air, exhilarated. That critical meeting marked a seismic shift not just in the perception of his peers, but within himself. He had transcended the limitations placed upon him, reclaiming not only his narrative but gifting others a space to reclaim theirs as well. Emma's disdain lingered as a distant memory, eclipsed by the sense of triumphant fulfillment that enveloped him. He was no longer tethered to the skepticism of others. Instead, he stood in the bright light of possibility, a recognized creator, confident in his vision and fueled by aspirations that would propel him into a future where dreams manifested into realities. Jordan had arrived at the moment of truth and achieved more than he had ever imagined. He'd forged not just a showcase, but a community, a beacon illuminating the path for all unseen talents. Now is the time for you to embrace your transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for personal journeys of overcoming. Comment your reactions and theories about the conclusion. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering message. You need to support true stories of resilience and growth. Don't wait even one more second.